Lofty, you there?
Lofty,
Yes,
no audio.
we're just going live in a while. We're just
Oh,
ready to go live soon, pretty soon. Well, we are live already. We're gonna start the conversation in a while.
No audio is coming through, okay? Lofty, the voice is off.
All right, a pleasant good afternoon to everyone here. Let me say a special good afternoon to everyone locked in already to the Civic Vibes program this afternoon. Paula, I'm just doing a testing here. Can you hear me, Paula? Zed, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, I do.
I can hear you.
Hold on. Let me just turn off that music in the background there. Yes, go on. Are you guys hearing me loud and clear?
Yeah,
Yes.
Lofty.
All right, good. Thank you very much. All right, good. Okay, I was just saying that good afternoon to everyone already on the live. Today being the 17th of July 2022, that is where we're about to make a start this afternoon with our Civic Vibes engagement here this afternoon. We want to say a special good afternoon to our esteemed guests. No stranger, they need no introduction, and they are here this afternoon. Zed Lloyd, passionate brother. We all know Zed Lloyd on the front line each and every time with his very passionate contributions about his country, Dominica. He will be talking to us this afternoon, as well as former Attorney General, Mr. Bernard Wilshire. He will be joining us shortly, and also no stranger as well. He was there for the past week. Mr. Alvin Thomas will be joining us shortly for the conversation that we're about to have. We are basically continuing on the subject of the CCJ's summary report that they gave to Dominica, basically telling Dominica what we have been saying among ourselves for a very long time, that our elections in Dominica are not free, they're certainly not fair. And the CCJ basically gave us a trump card, as it were, to deal with that and to rectify that problem where future elections in Dominica are concerned. And so this afternoon, without further ado, let me move across to Paula Celestin, the co-host of this program, and say a special good afternoon to you, Paula, and how are you?
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Lofty. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all our listeners, our viewers. It's yet another blessed Sunday afternoon, very sunny from my end. I want to give God thanks and praise for yet another day. And to all the persons, as usual, on a Sunday afternoon who always look forward in hearing us, I want to say blessed Sunday afternoon to each and every one of them. Good afternoon to Mr. Zed Lloyd.
Good afternoon, my dear.
Yeah, and how are you doing, Mr. Lloyd?
I'm good. Happy to be here, Happy to be here.
Okay, nice to have you this afternoon. Nice to have you. Lofty, what about you, Lofty?
Well, Paula, I'm there. I'm not as good as you, but I'm there.
Okay, Lofty.
Yes, Paula, we just need a little more light on your face. That would suffice. That would do. A little more light if you can do that.
And you could maybe just turn your mic down a little bit, Paula. Just bring your mic down a little bit.
Okay. I will do that from my end. I'll do that from my end, Paula.
Okay, cool,
yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, Paula, much better.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Zed, good afternoon to you, brother.
Good afternoon, brother. Good afternoon.
Yes, in terms of your introductory, Zed, you need no introduction, but Zed Lloyd is Zed Lloyd. And so, Zed, tell your people out there a special good afternoon, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, Lofty, we're about the people's business. I mean, it has its ups and downs, it has its, it has its moments, but we're about the people's business. I think that is, we've made that our mission. I don't think it's optimal yet. I think more of us need to be on the ground in Dominica, myself included, so we can do this work in the way it's supposed to be done. But we're about the people's business. So while I'm out here, I'll continue making my contribution here this afternoon. I think we have an important conversation in place. And I just hope our other esteemed guests can join us so we can talk to the people and we can talk with the people, you know, about these issues that are affecting us.
Yes, brother. Thank you very much. Yes. And as you said, thank you, Zed, for your opening statements here. And as you said, we hope that Brother Bernard Wilshire, that is the former Attorney General under, well, I shouldn't say this Labour Party government, but a Labour Party government. He held that position, as it were, of Attorney General in Dominica. So I know he will have a lot to say in terms of the comments of the CCJ in terms of that report on our elections in Dominica. So we can await Brother Wilshire's comments sometimes later in the program. And also very erudite brother Alvin Thomas. I was going to say Arundel Thomas, but it's Alvin Thomas. They will be here sometimes later. That is Arundel Alvin Thomas, that is. And also, yes, I can see Alvin Thomas is here already. Alvin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I believe I'm hearing you. Yeah, loud and clear.
Yes, I keep mixing up your name with Arundel this afternoon. I don't know why.
that happens sometimes, man. That happens sometimes. My apologies for the late coming on. You know how these technical issues happen sometimes.
True.
And I'm not as young as this guy there, the guy called Zed. You know, technically savvy. I'm an old man trying to figure this thing out at my age. You see that? Trying to figure this thing out. And my grandson is not at home, so I can't even call him and say, "Hey, dude, come help grandpa." What's going on, Zeddy?
You're looking good, brother. You're looking good. You're looking good. Keep doing your thing, man. It's all
I'm
right.
trying, man. I'm trying.
I'm here. Happy to be here with you. Happy to be, you know, we can converse and have some objective conversation and that.
Same here.
Very happy to be here.
Same here. Hello, Paula.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas, and how are you doing today?
Man, should I say not as well as you are?
You look good. You look good.
Oh boy, well, if you say that, I will accept it. I certainly won't reject that compliment.
It's a pleasure to have you again.
Same here.
Okay, good. Looking forward for a great discussion here this afternoon as usual.
All right, yep,
Okay,
agree.
Nice.
All right, gentlemen and lady, we did the formalities as it were. Let us get into the meat of things. We're still awaiting our brother Bernard Wilshire. He will get here shortly, but we have to start the program here in the interest of time this afternoon. Just before I do so, let me shout out a number of persons already on the live feed here with us. Persons like Vanya Moses Etinoff, Carol Bruni, Miss Ernest, that is Evian Ernest. We have David Andre. We have also Dorothy Jumin, Stephanie John Baptist, Cecilia, a bed minister. These are some of our fans out there. That is a Civic Vibes fans that is. We have Ivinia Joseph, all the way in the Louisville area. Good afternoon to you, my friend, and your husband. Koru Rafu Senior, good afternoon. Patricia Zamore in the St. Martin area. Dave Bertrand is a usual suspect. Good afternoon to you, bro. Margel Durand, I term Margel as part of the Civic Vibes team at this time, a very, very erudite brother as well. You know a lot that went down in the 70s, and we always look to him for conversations when this time come around. So Margel Durand, good afternoon to you and the entire family at this time. We have Edna Ernest, good afternoon as well. Pat Corbett, our brother up there in the north of Dominica, very solid brother. You know, we normally link up sometime, and trust me, when Pat speak to you, you have to listen in terms of the politics. Let me give you guys, let me let up a little secret that Pat normally tells me each and every time. Pat tells me if his wife sends him to Roseau to buy stuff, whatever it is, or to do some business, he may forget. But when it comes to politics and what goes on in Dominica, this guy has this thing down under his belt like a science, and he goes back, he really go back in time and rip up the old stuff, go in the archives.
Lofty, I hope his wife is not listening and you put the guy in trouble by hearing that.
Well,
So that's trouble. Because I know what I have to contend with in my own home when it comes to that.
so Brother Pat Corbett is a serious politician in his own right. I can tell you that. So, Brother Corbett, good afternoon to you, sir. Owen Prosper, Royston Francis, Vernie Vashi, that is. Marvin Sheldon Boland, good afternoon. Indira Telemark, Judith Cochran. You know, and the list goes on and on. Celia King, Marlene Shillingford, Anthony Joseph, Omar Monell, Caroline Warrington. And folks, the list goes on and on and on. If we continue calling the names here, we will start the program over at 6 o'clock. But we just want to say here, all of you, thanks for being here. We know you enjoy, you appreciate the conversations that we have here each and every Sunday. And this afternoon, we are not going to let you down in that department. You see this speaking I'm doing now? That is the most speaking I'll be doing for the 2-hour program. Zed, Alvin, Bernard, and Paula to a small extent, they will take it away in just a while. I'll just be engaging your comments and suggestions to them. All right, so yes, guys. Brother Thomas, let me start the ball rolling if you so. You were here last week. It's a continuum of the conversation. We are continuing on. How and where would you want to start up this afternoon, as this program is really geared at finding a solution or solutions to Dominica's electoral woes? Alvin.
All right. Well, thank you again, Lofty, for that brief introduction and the fine things you've said about me. Flattery in a sense, but I'll take it. It's always a pleasure to be part of that discussion. And to the many listeners and folks who are tuned in, I say a pleasant good afternoon to you in Nature Isle. I just see our brother Wiltshire has just joined us there. So good afternoon, brother Wiltshire, man. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon.
Is it in London you are?
That's right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand you had to go there to help out our brother Boris. So I hope you're making some headway with that.
Yeah, he's beyond help now.
But yes, Lofty, thanks for having me here again, and to say a pleasant good afternoon to all our listeners, and Paula as well. It's always a pleasure to be a part of that discussion. You asked the question, where do we go from here, and sort of a way forward. But bear with me for a little while, and I'm so happy that our brother Bernard is here with us, because he is the legal mind among us here. And although I said on the last program, law should be something that is intricate. The law is there, and the courts are there to arbitrate matters of dispute between the ordinary man. And it's not meant to be complicated that the ordinary man does not understand a judgment or the result. Otherwise, you'll have war of the jungle. But having said that, bear with me for a little while, because what I want to do this afternoon, even before we delve into the meat of the matter and discuss what we are here for. Last week when we were here, I made a reference to the point that our democracy is at threat. That's a fundamental issue there. And I made the comment that if we cannot exercise our rights to vote in a fair and fair election without the taints of irregularities, then our democracy is threatened, and none of the other things matter. This should be the number one issue and discussion at this stage. I will go further to say this afternoon that democracy thrives when the infrastructures of democracy is strong. And one of those infrastructures and those pillars is the judiciary. There are several structures, infrastructures, and institutions that help to thrive and foster a democracy. And among these are the judiciary. And I'm saying so against the background of, since we met, a statement which was issued by the Attorney General on the matter as it relates to the CCJ ruling. And I'm sure you got a copy of that statement, but for purposes of our discussion this afternoon, I just want to reference a few areas. So just bear with me a little. And of course, as I said, Bernard is here. So Bernard is a legal mind here, and he will speak more directly, and I err on his advice and judgment. But the statement coming from the Attorney General, among other things, in his letter stated, following on the hotly contested general election in Dominica in 2009, which was won by the Dominica Labour Party. You hear those words? Which was won by the Dominica Labour Party. So that alone indicates that he's speaking on behalf of the Dominica Labour Party. He's the Attorney General of Dominica, not the Attorney General of the Dominica Labour Party. And he goes on to say, the first judge assigned to hear them dismiss all the 10 petitions. And in one of his paragraphs in his letter, he said the CCJ made wholly gratuitous comments. And for the benefit of our listeners, they can look up the meaning of what gratuitous means in that context, which in the context of the politically volatile Dominica has been seized upon by the opposition, UWP, to foment public attack on the legitimacy of the government. And the most interesting part in the letter is his last paragraph. He said the government of Dominica hopes that given the serious and no doubt unintended state of affairs, the CCJ will take, now he's directing the CCJ, the Attorney General, the CCJ will take appropriate steps to clarify and avoid a repeat. So he's now chastising them. Don't you dare do that again. Avoid a repeat of this kind of gratuitous commentary on political affairs. So he has brought the CCJ into what is described as a political fra. That's the Attorney General. Now, let me just say, for purposes of that discussion, the plaintiff filed a petition as candidates or individuals that contested an election. Okay? When they nominated themselves, they may have nominated themselves Jed, Lloyd, Alvin Thomas, occupation, painter, carpenter, whatever. The Prime Minister Skerry didn't contest the election as Prime Minister Skerry. He contested the election as Roosevelt Skerry, representing the Dominica Labour Party in the constituency of Oecs. And if I now went up against him as Alvin Thomas and I felt aggrieved that there's an issue, then yes, I file a petition as a voter or somebody against the candidate who went up in Oecs, Roosevelt Skerry, not Prime Minister Skerry. Okay? So I just wanted to clarify that. Let me refer the folks listening to a letter dated it's a letter dated 5th December 2019. And that letter came from the Oecs Bar Association. And it says Oecs Bar condemns attack on judiciary in the Commonwealth of Dominica. And they were referring specifically there to the elections of 2019. And they say the Oecs Bar Association with deep concerns and continuing unrest and agitation in the Commonwealth of Dominica on the eve of the 6th December 2019 general election, we are particularly concerned about the recent attack on Madam Justice Bernice Stevenson, one of the two local judges prior and subsequent to the hearing of a recent election matter. Apparently, dissatisfied with her ruling, the judge has come under sustained and seemingly well-orchestrated attacks, threatening her own safety and personal security, unquote. That was from the Oecs. I have another letter there dated 19th October 2020. And that one is from the Dominica Bar Association. And it reads, the Dominica Bar Association, DBA, strongly condemns the recent statement by the leader of the opposition attacking the judiciary following the court's decision delivered on Wednesday, 14th October 2020 on the strikeout application of the election petition seeking to void the December 2019 election of 10 constituencies. We refer specifically to the following statement made on Q95 radio by the leader of the opposition, quote, I believe that the judge's ruling on the application to strike out the election petition is not the work of a judge in the meaning and a purpose of a system of justice. Rather, it's the work of an axe-grinding political activist under the influence for whatever reason, of course, is opposed to truth, righteousness, and justice in the democratic governance of Dominica. That is my opinion, unquote. Why am I referring to those two letters? Because I'm saying here what's good for the goose, good for the gander. Because if the Oecs Bar Association and the Dominica Bar Association found it necessary to call out and raise issues as it relates to the ruling of the court, then why is it we are yet to hear anything from the Dominica Bar Association or the Oecs Bar Association in relation to that particular matter? And therefore, I am happy that Bernard is here today as an officer of the court. And he will, in some way or other, address this matter. Let me, bear with me a little here, Bluffy, just bear with me a little, because I think this is very important, what I'm doing. It's extremely important because it grinds away at what, as I said, the democracy. If those infrastructures and institutions are undermined, then everything else does not matter. Nothing else matters. Let me refer you to an address that was delivered in September 14th through the 16th of 2012. And those remarks were made by the Honorable Justice Adrian Saunders, Judge of the Caribbean Supreme Court of Justice, on the occasion of the Oecs Bar Association 9th regional meeting. That was back in 2012. It's a little while back. Hear what they had to say on the matters which relates to the responsibility to build public confidence in the justice system. That was Justice Saunders speaking then. Finally, I wish to close by commenting briefly on one of the very serious challenges we all face in this region. It is this: how do we build public trust and confidence in the justice system? Like stock market, the justice system thrives on public confidence, and judges and lawyers alike have a collective responsibility to build such confidence. This is not an easy task in the Caribbean, not least because the public's assessment of the judiciary is often confused with its appraisal of other facets of law enforcement for which the executive and not the judiciary must take responsibility. The sad truth is that the Caribbean, a noticeable gap in the Caribbean, a noticeable gap exists between, on the one hand, judicial performance, even if the same is characterized by excellence, and on the other hand, public trust, unquote. But the lack of public trust is frustrating, and it must be confronted, especially by the bar. By the bar. It is one thing to hold judges to high standard. It is quite another to cast unfair and malicious imputations, which is what the Attorney General letter sought to do, on honest, hardworking judicial officers, many of whom accept judicial appointment at considerable personal sacrifice. But the Bar Association have a responsibility to denounce such slander, especially when its source is the lawyer for the losing litigant. So are we now saying that the Attorney General is speaking on behalf of the Dominica Labour Party as quote unquote the losing litigant and is seeking to bring the CCJ and the justices into disrepute? Is that what we are seeing now insofar as the infrastructure of democracies is being undermined, that being the judiciary? Let me do two other quotes and I will end there. Let me just do two others and I will end, because I think it's important. In another remarks presented, this time it was by the Honorable Sir Dennis Byron, President of the Court of Justice, on the occasion of the luncheon series of the Dominic Association of Industry and Commerce. And I called already for private sector persons and various people to speak on this electoral issue. Because if the electoral issue, the process is tainted, it means therefore our development as a country is going to be affected. Nothing else matters. And here what Justice Byron had to say, in among other things, as it relates to justice. In some quarters, it's, and I'm quoting Justice Byron here, in some quarters, it seems almost fashionable to suspect that politicians exercise control and authority over the judges and influence their decision making in given cases. However, we should encourage an awareness of the CCJ's institutional arrangement, as it will become clear that these safeguards completely shield the court and judges from any political interference. The Attorney General is saying that the justices had some political interference insofar as the comments that they made in their ruling. The CCJ is fully independent in the best of tradition. The judges are appointed after a competitive selection process and is free from political control and interference. And he concluded by saying, given the opportunity to maximize its full potential, there can be no doubt that the CCJ will acquit itself as a sterling institution that can serve the people of Dominica with excellence. So that was Sir Dennis Byron. And the final comment I will make in closing, because I'll close, but I think these are so important, but I will close. The final comment I will make on this particular matter, two final comments as a matter of fact, was another address that was delivered by Justice Winston Anderson, Judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice, on the occasion of the U Woodin Law School graduation on the 6th of October, 2018. And here's what Justice Anderson had to say. Incidentally, he's one of those persons on that new CCJ ruling that was issued. As a rule, only lawyers can represent others before our courts. This is a distinct privilege. Lawyers administer the law, and there aren't many areas of our lives that are not covered by the law, because the law is about relationship, our relationship with each other. A tenant's relationship to landlord, an employer relationship to its employee, a state's relationship to the citizens, the state's relationship with other states. Why is regulating this relationship so important? Because that is the route to justice and peace and prosperity. If we don't have and enforce rules in society by which we relate to each other, other than things tend to fall apart. We have chaos and the rule of the jungle. And that was what the justice had to say. And he referenced then that first and foremost, you, and you're referring to the lawyers, must never forget your code. And he's referring here to code of ethics. Prior to your formal induction into the profession, you're required to subscribe to a code of ethics that spells out your responsibility to the state and the public, to the client, the court, and the administration of justice, and to fellow attorneys. A code of ethics. Yeah. From a negative perspective, he goes on to say, so study the code. Even though you have passed the ethics exam, keep a copy close to hand, perhaps on your bedside table. Make it your creed. It is your word of honor. Live by it. This is one simple step can assure your success in the profession. Now, I'm going to end. Because as I said, it's important we make that point. I'm going to end on the code of ethics of the OECS bar. And those code of ethics were developed at the OECS bar at its second meeting in Anguilla on the 15th of June, 1991. And it was further amended by the OECS bar at its council's meeting in St. Lucia on the 9th of March, 1996. And among the various areas in that code, you have Part A, which deals with in relation to the profession and himself. And then you have in relation to the state and the public. An attorney at law owes a duty to the state to maintain its integrity, its constitution, and its laws, and not to aid, abet, counsel, or assist anyone to act in any way contrary to those laws. Section 83 of the CCJ reports made reference to the fact that there seemed to be a patent non-compliance with the list. Section 17 of the Electoral Commission Act. So clearly the Attorney General, to me, the best thing would have been to make reference and say, well, hey guys, if there appears to be some serious problem as Attorney General, I'll take it upon myself to investigate those matters, to look into those matters, and to assure the public that the Electoral Commission is operating above board. Let me just end quickly now by saying, and as I said, we have Bernard here with us, and Bernard will speak more adequately to that. The section that deals with in relation to the courts and the administration of justice. I'm referring again to the Code of Ethics of the Oecs Bar. An attorney at law shall maintain a respectful attitude towards the court and shall not engage in undignified, which is what the Attorney General's statement is, undignified or discourteous conduct, which is degrading to the court. An attorney at law shall encourage respect for the courts and the judges. He had no respect there with that statement, asking the CCJs to explain and do not ever do that again, and do not get involved in politics. An attorney at law shall support judges and magistrates against unjust criticism. He criticized the CCJ. Where there is grounds for complaint against a judge or magistrate, an attorney at law may make representation to the proper authorities, and in such cases, the attorney at law shall be protected. The conduct of an attorney at law towards his fellow attorney at law shall be characterized by courtesy, fairness, and good faith, and he shall not permit ill feeling between clients to affect his relationship with his colleagues. All of that is contained, lofty listeners, in the Code of Ethics of the Bar Association. So clearly, what we have seen, as I said earlier, if Roosevelt's carried as a candidate in the election to which a petition was filed challenging his validity of the election, as well as Melissa Skerritt and the others, then yes, you cannot agree to the, you're free not to agree with the ruling of the CCJ. But again, this to my mind is something that the attorneys representing the Dominica Labour Party, of which they had candidates in the election, need to speak on behalf, not the Attorney General of Dominica. So I'm making those points to say, and I'm going to end, that our democracy is threatened, our judiciary system is now threatened, the apex court, the CCJ now, the Attorney General is challenging them. So we have serious problems, guys. And I think the time has come for us to seriously find the courage to change the things that we know we can change and to speak on the things that we need to speak to. So again, I'm challenging the Bar Association in Dominica and even the OECS Bar to respond to that kind of statement which was issued against the CCJ by our Attorney General. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Brother Thomas, for basically laying the foundation for the conversation that we're about to have here this afternoon. The number of quotes that you quoted from a very factual standpoint, that for sure will do justice to the conversation to come. Let me now up across to Bernard. Bernard, good evening for you. Good evening to you. We are here, and I would just want to invite you now, Bernard, based on the summary report or based on what you have read thus far, read the topic at hand and the CCJ summary report. Where and how do you want to start your comments, Brother Wilshire? Good evening again.
Good evening, Loftus. Good evening, Brother Alvin, Brother Zed, and Sister Paula, and to all Dominicans at home and abroad, or even other Caribbean people who are listening to this program. Yes, Brother Alvin, I think you laid the basis of the objections that you would have to the statement of the Attorney General. My only problem, Brother Thomas, is that I think you've taken this Attorney General far too seriously. You're talking to him as if you're talking to a rational, bona fide Attorney General. You're not talking to any such person. You're talking to a political hack. His statement was a direct attack on the rule of law. The rule of law is fundamental to our not only to democracy, but to the very society that we are aspiring to run. Without the rule of law, you have the rule of men. And that is what I'm afraid we've seen over the last 2 decades, especially since this man, this gold digger, come prime minister, who said right from the beginning that he came to dig for gold. He came to make himself rich. You forget? He said he's not going to, nobody is going to make him leave office and go back to Oecs like Brother Maynard or even Mr. Leblanc of revered memory. He wasn't going to do that. He came to make money. He came in as a pauper with having nothing. And he's now reputed to be one of the richest prime ministers in the Caribbean. And you know how he's done it? By selling Dominica away to foreigners. That is what he's done. He sold passports, selling citizenships, so that in fact, very soon, we might actually end up with a majority of Dominicans, not in fact native-born Dominicans at all. He's completely undermined our sovereignty and our future security. The people don't know that. They cannot see it. They're blind. And unfortunately, it isn't this generation that will pay for it. It is the generations to come that will pay for it. This is an attack on the rule of law. This is the hallmark of all dictators over the ages. The power, the sovereignty of the state resides in the Constitution, in the laws. The courts are empowered to interpret those laws. When the politicians, the executive, actually takes to attacking the courts because the courts dare to act independently, you know we were in trouble.
Yeah.
And we are in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when the CCJ, when it was proposed, many people in the Caribbean were opposed to it. And I must say, as you see, there were referendums in Grenada, I think it was, referendums in Antigua, referendums in St. Vincent, and in every single place, the people voted against the CCJ. And you know why? They voted against the CCJ because they didn't trust the system that we have in the Caribbean, the system of law. And they didn't trust it because they thought the court would not be independent. It would be beholden to the politicians. And that is a criticism that is made, in fact, of the Oecs court, that they are not truly independent. But we saw what actually happened when, you remember when this lady, I think it was Monica Joseph, when she in fact her contract was not renewed because she dared to oppose or to take a different position, which the government, I think it was of Grenada at the time, did not like. Our own Honorable Brian Allen had great problems with the court because the politicians did not like the independent stance that he was taking. And as a result of that, it seems to me that our OECS court is in fact not regulate, but self-censor themselves in order not to offend the politicians. And that is precisely what prevents a court from being independent. As a result of the experience with the politicians having too much say in the affairs of the courts, almost every single jurisdiction in the Caribbean opposed the Caribbean Court of Justice. The Jamaican bar was opposed to it. Up till now, the Trinidad people have not still, the court is in Trinidad, and Trinidad is still not a member of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Because, and I was Attorney General at the time, when in fact in the early 2000, and when that issue was coming up, we knew that that was the problem that people had with the court. And therefore what the court did, and a very good thing it did, it realized that so long as politicians had anything to do with the appointment of judges, the promotion of judges, or the renewal of the contracts of judges, or their payment, then that would compromise the independence of the court. And wisely, and certainly very luckily for us, the Caribbean Court of Justice developed a new way of funding the courts, where I believe a big pot of money, I don't know, it was $100 million or whatever it was actually accumulated or got from different sources, invested, and that money was the money that actually runs the court, so the court does not depend upon the individual governments for their payment. This is not the case with the OECS court. And that is why the Caribbean Court of Justice today, and I'm very pleased to say that it is now showing a degree of independence, which is building confidence, beginning to be, they're not the full way yet, but they're beginning to build confidence in the Caribbean people, by the Caribbean people, in the independence of the court. And that is precisely what we've seen with the Attorney General of Dominica attacking the Caribbean Court of Justice, is exactly what people were afraid would happen if we in fact left the Privy Council and went to the Caribbean Court of Justice. But I'm glad to say that that has not actually transpired, is not proved to be right. I believe we are being proved to be wrong, that the Caribbean Court of Justice has in fact succeeded in establishing itself as an independent court. And I sincerely hope that that independence will in fact be consolidated against the politicians. This Attorney General of Dominica should resign immediately. And we should call for his resignation, because he doesn't understand what it is to be an Attorney General, and he has no capacity to protect our people, to protect our freedoms, and protect our laws, when he is in fact attacking the Caribbean Court of Justice. He wants the Caribbean Court of Justice to in fact go back to what the OECS court is. And the OECS court is not fit for the purpose. The OECS court is still too much in hock to the politicians. And in my view, what the Attorney General has now shown is that this Caribbean court, the OECS court, should now be put under the direct administration of the Caribbean Court of Justice, and a similar kind of funding mechanism should in fact be established for the OECS court in order to make the OECS court truly an independent court. At the moment, I do not believe that that OECS court can claim to be a truly independent court. The politicians still have far too much influence upon the judges, and we've seen that all over the place. We've seen all over the place. We've seen the behavior of judges in these various islands. We know that the OECS court, I'm afraid I cannot give them my full endorsement, but I'm beginning to have a great respect for the Caribbean Court of Justice, and I hope that in fact there will be further development for the OECS court, and that there will be an integration of the Caribbean court, the OECS court, with greater integration with the Caribbean Court of Justice in order to secure the independence of the OECS court. That is what I'd have to say about that.
All right. You're continuing, brother?
Well, I'll join further on. I think we wanted to discuss the question of these, you know, the last rule, the judgment, the last ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice on the treating case. I mean, that is a case that shows some of the weaknesses in the system, because as it is now, the court clearly is not in a position to protect the democracy in our islands. The law itself needs to be reformed. Perhaps the constitution needs to be reformed, to be altered. I mean, this idea somehow that the court cannot, the Court of Appeal cannot hear an appeal on the merits of a case unless there is a final decision of the High Court. In other words, on interlocutory decisions, that, it seems to me, is a weakness. And I cannot see any good reason why that should be so. They've said that the reason why that is so is because the courts must be, they must be, how you call it, expedite. They must be able to expedite these decisions from the court. There shouldn't be delay, and so that the people must know, you know, who is ruling them and how they're being ruled and so on. But what we've seen, this petition was made when? Since in 2019, it is now 2022. So there is delay. And it seems to me I cannot see any reason why the Caribbean Court, the Court of Appeal, should not be able to, in fact, review a decision of the High Court, especially when that decision actually amounts to a final decision. This is what it is, because in fact the matters were being litigated were in fact struck off, and that was an end of the matter. That is, in that sense, it was a final decision. And to split hairs about final decisions being, you know, whether they're applications or whether they're orders and all that kind of nonsense, it just seems to me that that's just a kind of legal sophistry. And at the end of the day, what we actually want is for the courts to be able to have an effective way of preventing a government, a rogue government like that of Mr. Skerritt and the Astafans and these people, to prevent them from, in fact, you know, robbing our people of their democratic rights. And the court is not, at the moment, the court is not able to do this. And I think that they'll have to look again at this question of whether, in fact, an interlocutory decision can, in fact, be appealed. And I think they ought to amend. Either we amend the Constitution, or they have to find some way, because judges can always find ways to interpret or to construe laws to achieve the results they want. And it seems to me that's what exactly what they've done in this particular case.
Yeah, thank you, brother Wilshire, on that point. You just met it out there. One person on the feed is agreeing with you. One person calls him or herself Viva Mamo is writing here and is in agreement with you, brother Wilshire, and is saying agree 100% with Wilshire on the lack of integrity and professionalism of the Attorney General, the maturing process of the CCG, and the lack of confidence in the OECS judiciary. I just thought I would note that point to you as you wind up your comment here. Someone is agreeing with you.
I think lots of people will agree, actually, Brother Loftus, because we have the record of the OECS court, and it is not, in fact, to impugn. I'm not impugning the integrity of the judges necessarily. I'm actually saying that the system under which they have to operate does not, in fact, preserve and protect their independence. It makes them far too, I think it makes them nervous, to be quite honest, of taking decisions which might offend politicians and which, in fact, might have an impact upon their own promotion. Because we know, and the renewal of their contracts. Because we know that is what actually is. The politicians do have in the OECS court, the politicians do have that power. And that power ought to be removed from the politicians, and it ought to be made very much like the CCJ, where you have an independent commission that actually, an independent way of funding the court. And I think the OECS, the way that the OECS court is funded must in fact be integrated with the way in which the CCJ is funded. No use having an OECS court which is, still so vulnerable to the wiles of unscrupulous politicians like those in Dominica, and not just Dominica, but in those other islands. And you will see where the attorney general could now take it to attack the court and to want to be so presumptuous and rude as to say to the court that they must not, almost to give them instructions as to how they should behave. This man should resign. Do you think an attorney general in Britain could behave like that? Or an attorney general in Barbados could be? It's only where these people think our people are so ignorant and so blind that they cannot hold them to account. This attorney general should resign, and we should call for his resignation.
Yeah, point taken. Well said, Brother Wilshire. Let me move across now to Brother Lloyd. Brother Lloyd, you have been hearing, you have been listening. Your point, your time now to chime in on, brother.
I'm sorry.
Lofty, I fully get the idea of the courts and the predicament, that they're in terms of being independent institutions in the region. But my input here this afternoon is from the people's perspective and how we as a people can help shape these things into where they need to be. And so I think we, just as the politicians and these ill-advised attorney generals have that portfolio and that office and that stature to go on the attack in terms of the courts and to foster these negativities, we the citizens, I think, especially in Dominica and where we are, I think we have not really purchased, acquiesced, really consolidated the concept of public opinion and law in a way that we should, in a way that say Barbados understands, or the Trinis understands, or the Jamaicans understand. I don't think we have processed the idea that we can in fact impact the courts by our civic action. And I think that is where I want to, as we go through the afternoon, to kind of spread a little bit beyond just the legal paradigm, how we the people can shift the posture of the court. I think if we can have governments that can push forward those kinds of arguments that Brother Wilshire is talking about, that Brother Thomas is talking about, if we can have governments that can push forward progressive funding for the OECS courts, can push those dynamics to make those things happen, that is how they're going to happen. Although these courts are not independent of the government, but with excellent governance, we can arrive at those postures of independence. And so the people, that is where we come in, you know. That is where the people come in. The people through their advocacy and executing their civic right and citizenry can help make that CCJ and the OECS become independent institutions. And you see, things like electoral reform are a rite of passage, Lofty. That's why I like the judgment of the court. The people of Dominica are not mentally ready for electoral reform. Philosophically ready, prepared to sacrifice for these things to happen. You are not ready to handle the responsibility of electoral reform. It's a rite of passage. When you go through that process of proper electoral reform, nation, the people, they go through a mental transformation, you know. They go for a sense of maturity, which is what has happened in Barbados. That's why Brother Will should tell you, the attorney general in Barbados will be fired. It doesn't matter whether it's me or that's there or not there. He will be fired for that kind of attack on the courts. And that happens because the people of Barbados have mentally transformed themselves into a sense of political and legal consciousness that enables that kind of posture of the court to stand. And so that is where we are as a citizenry. Have we done the work? Have we done the groundwork? Have we done the homework to ensure that we as a country, as a nation, can now fully understand the responsibility that it brings on us to have electoral reform? Lofty, if we do not go through that process and that thing, we're going to come out of this worse than where we are going in, because the minds of our people will not be transformed into that necessary posture that we need for that transformation to take place. So I just want, as the conversation ensues, to be able to focus more on the citizenry and Dominica and the people and how we and our power, because a lot of the power that we have not understood it because the Attorney General does not give it to us, the Senior Counsel does not give it to us. All they have done is enshrine themselves into a protective carcass of the nonsense that's going on in Dominica, and not done what they're really supposed to do, which is give the citizens the proper legal armory for doing what they need to do to ensure a sound democracy. So just be in that kind of vein as we continue along the trajectory, Lofty. Peace and blessings.
Yes, brother. Peace and blessings indeed. And I love your some of your points that you made, your statements that in that you're basically asking us through this discussion this afternoon to help the citizens of Dominica make come alive the words of the CCG. Because yes, it is one thing to hear these words. It is one thing to meditate upon these words as Dominicans, but it's a totally different kettle of fish, as it were, to really have these words be part and parcel of our everyday life, especially where fraudulent elections should never be part and parcel of our living in Dominica. And so I like the angle that this discussion is about to take, really action-orientedness of engaging the citizens now, so that these words from the CCJ will not just be words on paper, will not just be song bites on news or on radio, wherever it is, but they can now be inculcated in our activities, so that Dominica and Dominicans will be the true beneficiary of freer and fairer elections. Let me just give Paula Celestine, a shot at the conversation we're having now, she being the co-host of the program. Paula, yes, you're on.
Yeah, Lofty, thank you very much. Lofty, I'm sitting here listening to the gentleman here this afternoon, and it is mind-boggling. The Attorney General is supposed to be one that should work for the people of Dominica. But as far as many persons, maybe who didn't know, they would have recognized by now, after that statement from the Attorney General, this Attorney General is not an Attorney General for the people of the Commonwealth of Dominica. This Attorney General is one for the Dominica Labour Party or for one man, Mr. Roosevelt. Because there is no way, unlike Mr. Wilshire have said it, that you would have an Attorney General, even in Barbados just out there, speaking in that way that this Attorney General have spoken. And when you have persons in position who have been appointed by the Dominica Labour Party, they feel like they have an allegiance to the Dominica Labour Party. And this is what Mr. Levi Peters have done. Because to be speaking in that way, then what do you expect that Dominicans would ask for his resignation and he's going to resign? Lofty, he will not resign. We have seen other things from other persons who supposed to be doing for Dominica and Dominicans. And they have gone so far to do things on the behalf of one man or for the Labour Party. And we have called for the resignation time and time again. And they continue to sit in this position. So what this Attorney General have done, some persons who do not know him, it comes as a surprise to them. But for me, it do not come as a surprise, because there are times when you need people like this to speak out, to say the things you expect them to say that are right for the people of Dominica, and they will not do it. So for him now to be attacking the persons who have spoken out, so Dominicans will actually open up their eyes and open up their ears to listen. Then that's where we have persons like these, who some of us call leaders. It's like they are not leaders, because no right leader or right thinking person would have done what this gentleman have done or what he have said. So the thing about it is, like Zed have said, we the people of Dominica, we have to make up our mind. We have to take it one way or the other. I can recall Eugenia Charles had said, to get rid of the United Workers' Party by any means necessary. I'm saying we need to get electoral reform, and we need to get it one way or the other. And we need to get rid of these people who are there, who are not working in the interests of Dominica and Dominicans by any means necessary. Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And folks, those of you on the live feed with us, please put in your comments there. We'll be engaging some of your comments later so that the guests here can reply or respond to you in terms of your question or comments. But one of the comments, brother Thomas, that I want to read to you in terms of someone making an assessment here of the CCG's reporting. That person is writing, that is John Bernard James is writing, and that is the situation I want to put to you, Brother Thomas, in terms of a response, and I guess the rest of the guests here. It starts by saying from John Bernard James, the CCG has issued a challenge to the citizens of Dominica. Open quote, remove the taints from your elections, close quote. The citizens should accept the challenge and start working. 1, get the electors list cleaned by all possible means. And number 2, ensure that all registered voters live at the address on the list. That person is saying at least these 2 suggestions, they're a good place to start. What are your comments on Mrs. James' point, Brother Thomas?
Yeah, thank you, Lofty. No, I fully support those comments by Sister James. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that the CCJ has challenged us Dominicans to deal with this particular matter. And I want to say too that I agree with Brother Zed that we now have to develop a one might say an approach or strategy in getting all Dominicans engaged as it relates to the whole matter of electoral reform. I fully agree with that. So I agree with the sister's comment. As it relates to the matter of the list, that was a very, how should I put it, a substantial issue that was raised, not just by in the CCJ's report, but even at the so-called hearing, if we want to call it a hearing or a trial. Well, I wouldn't say it's a trial with Justice Glasgow, where at section 83 of the CCJ report, it was noted, quote, the first instance judge, Justice Glasgow, made the following remarks about the list issue at 129 of Justice Glasgow's ruling. And it goes on to say, section 17 of the Registration Act states that the revised annual list and the supplementary register list are considered the register of electors for the respective polling district and shall be used at the registrar for an election. If the pleadings are taken as correct, that's what the CCJ is saying, then the use of the preliminary and supplementary register at the 6th December 2019 election was a patent non-compliance with section 17 of the Registration Act, a patent non-compliance. And somewhere in the CCJ's report, they were saying also that even if nothing else is done, but the mere fact that that matter was raised, that is a matter that requires some form of intervention, some of investigation. It requires that. So yeah, I agree. We now have to challenge and find a way where the people of Dominica, and I'm sure within the, how we should say it, how should I say it? Within the various organizations or the operations of the various groupings, political party and otherwise, there is a way of looking at those lists and ensuring that the lists are in compliance with the section 17. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I was just trying to see if I could, section 87 of the CCJ report. It says that the chief registering officer shall make all additional removal in consequence of any action taken by section 7. Persons deleted from the list due to objection, death, absent from Dominica, disqualification, or section 13, claim and objection being determined, and shall publish before the 20th of November 2022. So we are in what? We are in July. We have August, September, October, come 20th of November 2022. And of course, it's spelled out in the legislation when and how this are to be published. The corrected annual list as the revised list of electors. So by way of taking some action moving forward, we have now, between now and 22nd of November, to ensure that that list meets the conformity of section 17. So I agree with Sister James, and I think it's a matter now for us to put our hands to the wheels and do what is necessary, starting at wherever we need to start. If we want to start at the list, then yeah, let's start there and move on further.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen is that a decision has been made by all democratic forces in Dominica that there will be no further elections in Dominica until the electoral system has been reformed. That is a decision that should be taken, and that is a decision that we should go around to the country and inform all the people of Dominica that that is the position we are taking, and that is the position that we need to take in order to protect our liberties in the country. Otherwise, all you will get is a continuous, it will go on and on and on. You think Skerritt and them going to take any notice of the CCJ? They're already attacking it. They're going to take any notice of the CCJ. They're going to do exactly the same thing. And if the opposition is foolish enough to engage in any kind of charade, any kind of mock nonsense, and take part in any foolish election like that Skerritt want to thing again, then that is their business. But that is not going to get them anywhere. And I think the decision needs to be taken now, and the people of Dominica and Mr. Skerritt and his henchmen ought to be put on notice that there will be no further elections in Dominica until the electoral system, until the electoral reform has been accomplished and done. The problem with the CCJ decision is that they fudged the issue, because they themselves are saying in their judgment that there are certain matters that are so important that, in fact, irrespective of what, the technicalities of the rules, there's certain things in constitutional matters that override that, and that the Court of Appeal should, in fact, should be hearing it. For example, if there is a question of a fair hearing and so on, and yet they ended up by saying, although the lists were so tainted and the whole thing was so irregular, nevertheless they're saying that they should not intervene because because of the rule about finality, final decision, and so on. So they themselves didn't follow through on their own decisions, and the decision of Mr. Justice Jamada, which is very, very interesting and very commendable, and in fact, even of Mr. Justice Saunders, very commendable in the criticisms that they make. But nevertheless, it's what they call these decisions are obiter, which means that they are not in fact the law of the country. They're only opinions of the court, which is not actually the law. And so in the next, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we're exactly in the position that we are now. And don't forget that after the last election, and even election before that, the observers called for reform. They said that another election should not be held on the same old system, and 2 elections have been held on the same old system. And another one will be held in the same old section until the people are determined, to face Mr. Skerritt, to face him down. Mr. Skerritt can't be stronger than everybody in Dominica. And the people, there are ways in which, look at what the people of Sri Lanka have done. At the end of the day, it is the people are sovereign. The people are politically sovereign. The constitution is legally sovereign, but the people are politically sovereign. And if the people want to electoral reform, the people will have it. Mr. Skerritt can't stand against that. And if we cannot have the electoral reform, then we don't have a democratic society. We're back to slavery. And those who want to live in a slave state, that's their business. And to have a little man like Mr. Skerritt turning everybody into slaves in Dominica, what nonsense is that? I think the people of Dominica have got to stand up. You understand? And the opposition has got to be more resolute. They're too weak-kneed. The opposition must now be more resolute. They made the ridiculous decision last time and saying, "Oh, you're going to run. You're going to." What is the point of running an election, giving legitimacy to a state, to a process which is completely flawed and which you're bound to lose? And I hope there will be the opposition forces must now come together. The UWP by itself is not a suitable vehicle now for taking Dominica forward. And I think that should be recognized by everybody in Dominica. The UWP has now played out its role. And I think that is recognized. And I think the opposition, everybody should come together now. All the forces, opposition forces, come together and make up their minds and be resolute about it. And say there must be no further elections in Dominica until the electoral system has been reformed in a proper way, in accordance with the comments and the suggestions made by the Caribbean Court of Justice. Otherwise, we'll be slaves again in our own land.
Well, Brother Wiltshire, the CCJ made that quite clear in Section 108 here. Just what you're saying there, it's a matter of, like I think Zed said earlier, how we put that into action, because it's
Brother Thomas, just stick a pin right there. Let me just deal with someone on the live feed there in the name of Nelista Thomas. I'm seeing here. Nelista, the program is of a high caliber. It is of a high standard. If you don't like what you're hearing on the program, you can please omit yourself from the conversation. But it will not be wise of you to stay there trying to create any problems or defeat by attacking anybody personally. And so that is your first warning. The next option, you will be blocked or your comments will be deleted. Thank you very much. And that goes for everybody else. Yes, sorry about that, Brother Thomas.
No, thanks. Okay. No, I was just saying, in light of what Brother Wilshire said, I mean, the CCJ didn't mince word about it. They said they're in 108. However, there remains areas of grave concern about how the process of these elections was conducted. Future elections in Dominica ought not, underscore mine, ought not to proceed with these or similar things. So clearly the ball is in our courts at Dominicans, and you're right, that we should not have any future elections unless we remove, as one person would say on one of the programs, go wash that shimela. Tiwe go wash that shimela. And you know what that go wash is? The electoral reform process that is not good, that giving us the wrong results, the bad results, the tainted results that undermines our democracy. So it's right there in section 108. How do we take that now, as you rightly say, and coalesce our efforts, as Zed I'm sure is saying, the various opposition parties, the business sector, the private sector, the churches, the youth group, everybody, because the election reform doesn't affect us political parties, you know, it has implication on the country and our democracy.
So we need a committee for a new committee for national salvation of all, I was a member of the last committee for national salvation in 1979. When we were faced with a crisis, we called upon all civic organizations, the trade unions, all kinds of community organizations. We came together and we met and we discussed the business of protecting the democracy and the government of the country. And I think that is what we need to do. We need to do it now, because we have a government that cannot claim to be legitimate. This present government has lost legitimacy. And the Caribbean Court of Justice has actually hinted at it. They haven't gone the whole way to say it, but they've hinted at it. And these decisions are being taken, you understand, without really the consent of the people. Have the people of Dominica consented to the wholesale creation of new citizens that might overwhelm their numbers? Has that ever been put to the people of Dominica?
Nope.
Do we consent to that? Do we consent to our own obsolescence, our own demise? Because that is what is happening. The people are not seeing it. This man is taking away our country from us. I've been saying that over and over and over again. How much, when will people wake up? And what is happening with the money? What is happening with the money? It's building great mansions for Mr. Skerritt. It's building great mansions for a new elite. It's bringing great mansions for foreign interests. For foreign interests who are making most of the money from it. Most of the money is going to them. As it is now, for example, the housing program, there is not even an accountability to the public, to Parliament. There's no accountability to the Parliament by Mr. Hayden, by Montreal, what you call them, Montreal, whatever you call that company. They have been given illegally, they have been given the power to get money directly from selling of passports, which is public money, which should go into the consolidated fund, and using that money themselves to build houses without any accounting to Parliament. This is what is going on. And this has to stop. Otherwise, our country will be taken away from us, and we will in fact be deprived. Our people are young, our people will be deprived, of their birthright. And people don't seem to see how serious this is, because they're saying they're blinded by money. They think, oh, this is money, money, money. But what you're doing really is, in fact, I've often used the example of a man who has a bad a bad heart, a bad kidney, and he doesn't have enough money to go to hospital to have an operation to fix his kidney. So he decides the best thing to do is sell his heart in order to fix his kidney. And that's exactly what we are doing. And it's a dangerous situation. We cannot see the dangers right now, but these dangers will be upon our descendants. We're selling off the country. This is why Ralph Gonsalves have said, no, he will not go down that route. And Mia Motley in Barbados have said, no, she will not go down that route. And we have to put a stop to it. It's a matter of our own security, the security of the country, the people. It is a matter of life and death. And our people do not see it. And I'm appealing to all Dominicans at home and abroad. Open your eyes and look at that program for what it is. They're selling the country off under your very nose. And no one is accounting for the money that is being spent. And all they're telling you is, well, don't you see the housing? Don't you see the houses we are building? Don't you see this? That is not, what kind of nonsense is that? That is not a way to deal with public affairs. There's a process, there's a law, there's a process by which all public monies have got to be accounted for. There have to be estimates at the beginning at a certain time in the year. These estimates have got to be voted on by Parliament. The government has got to say how much money they're going to spend, what the money is going to be used for. You cannot have a situation where hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on so-called housing programs, which is not in fact within the system that is there to protect and to account for public spending. You cannot have that.
All right, thank you, brother.
Situation.
Yes, indeed. Let me just make a comment here based on brother Serge Resnet comments on the live feed, and then someone asked a question of you, brother Will. Shall be asking you in just a while. But first of all, brother Serge says here, it's not about money. It's all about selling of our country back to the colonizers and depriving a future generation of what your forefathers fought for. Open your minds and open your mind, black man. That is what this brother is saying here. The question to you now from Omar Monel. It says here, question to Wilshire. Can the money be recovered from MMCE due to an illegal agreement offered by the government?
Well, that is what we have. That is what is going to be, we're going to have to deal with. We're going to find a way of doing that. MMCS does not, we don't know how much money is spent. Do you know, Lofty, how much money has been spent on all these housings?
Not at all.
You don't know. Parliament doesn't know. Our constitution gives Parliament the power of the purse. And that is a war that has been fought because our law, our system derives from the English system. And that was a battle that was fought between Parliament and the King way back in the 17th century, what is called the Glorious Revolution, when in fact it was determined that all money matters to deal with money is the province of Parliament. It has to be voted by Parliament. It has to be debated publicly.
Yes.
The executive cannot spend not a penny without authority of Parliament. And yet this man, through a contract, which is illegal, has in fact voted spending hundreds of millions of dollars without any parliamentary authority. That is what the people of Dominica have to have to deal with. I mean, you know, the people saying, okay, we have housing, he's giving us housing and so on. And, you know, when people are poor, I mean, but he's taking advantage of the people. That's what is happening there. He's taking advantage of this insecurity and the poverty of the people. How a little man like Skerrit ever to get in that kind of power, of position where he can do these things and nobody can question him? I mean, come on.
I know. Thank you. Zed, I want to piggyback on the point that Brother Wilshire made, and I was going to ask him, but he just, basically stole my thunder in that Bernard Wilshire gave us at least an area that we can start. And that starting point is the forces coming together and deciding once and for all what we have been saying. There should be no more elections in Dominica until and unless we have cleaned up our mess, as it were. Would you agree to that, Zed, as at least a starting point to rally the forces together?
Well, Lofty, here is the thing, and that's why I love the report. I love what the judges did. Here is the thing. The judges have essentially said there is a problem in Dominica, Not only have they said there is a problem, they in a sense have partially, somewhat almost fully defined what the problem is, So we've been going through this hustle and trying to get a mass of people together, and it seems to be a collective that is troublesome to pull off, and political separation and all those things. But here's what I want to suggest at this juncture. I think the court gives us a unique opportunity, Lofty, where we do not necessarily have to worry about whether we can get a mass of people together, but whether we can get a consortium of consolidated people who are fully in unison with an effort to disrupt and create conditions that forces the situation at the very least to go back to the courts. You see, what I'm trying to say is, instead we worry about going back over this thing of we're trying to bring everybody together and it doesn't seem to be happening. I say here we are. We can utilize a constructive and coalesced mass of people who are totally convinced of this movement and what is going to be done. And we can be disruptive to the system to force the system to react, to force the courts to react, to force the legal structure to react. And we can find ourselves revisiting the very court that has laid the premise of what we are doing is right because what is going on is wrong. And so I want us to think of that approach as these patriots listening, the citizens, and as, because you see, Einstein says something about, doing the same thing over and over again. It's kind of craziness. We've been trying to pull a mass of people together in Dominica, Lofty, and it's been our liability. It's been our biggest liability. We have this thing with Justice Byron. We have not even used the opportunity to advocate for our people. We sit and wait for Byron's decision. Mistake number one. This whole era of Byron should have been our moment for social agitation. We should have dictated the conversation and Byron's efforts. We did not. We stood by and saying the CCJ has given us an important opportunity, Lofty. An opportunity where even if we cannot get the big mass that we're talking about, we can work this situation to our advantage conscientiously by our willingness to be arrested and to be dealt with the system direct and disrupt the system. Disrupt the system in small mass. It doesn't have to be a big mass of people. Force the situation back into the court, force it back into this process of thing, and let us go back where the government has already been defined as being at fault. As being at fault. Because as Wiltshire already says already, the OECS court is a joke. It's a joke. You see what I'm saying? So our aim as these concerted few, whatever it is, I want us to think as this concerted few. If it grows in bigger mass, awesome. But we need a solution. And what we have is not a mass, we have a concerted few. So now is the time when that concerted few has to sit down and get together as that mass, whatever it is, and decide that it is time for civic disruption of this political process. Civic disruption. We conscientiously allocate ourselves to be prosecuted by the system. Because that is where we have to go. That is where we have to go.
Call it civil disobedience. Call it civil disobedience, Zed. And we've got great examples. We've seen it with Martin Luther King. We saw it with Gandhi. We saw it with the early Christians.
Exactly.
In the catacombs of Rome.
Exactly.
You understand? we are not talking about violence at all. We're talking about agitation. We're talking about our rights to demonstrate, our rights to stand up, and on our rights. Yes, you call it disruptive. Civil disobedience is disruptive in a kind of way. It's not violent.
Yes.
And there's no, we should prevent them from trying to confuse these two things. We are not violent at all. We should not be. But we need to be resolute and to let the government, and the people will understand what we are saying when once that is the case. And of course, there are risks. Of course, there are risks. Because you have a police force that has now, over the years, been completely, I mean, I don't know what word I would use. I mean, they've now become, henchmen for Mr. Scarrett. And some of them are actually trigger happy. We know that. But they cannot stand against the forces of all the people. We saw what happened in St. Kitts. If the people of Dominica are not prepared to prevent the government from importing wholesale people who should not be allowed, were not eligible to vote, by bringing these forces into the country, the people of St. Kitts did that in the last year, and they won the election. You understand? They prevented these planes from landing. That is direct civil action. It is not violent action. It is not attacking anybody. It is, in fact, passive resistance. And that is what we're going to have to make up our minds, that is what, otherwise all we'll be witnessing is a slow death of our country.
Exactly.
That is what we'll be witnessing.
Yeah. And so, Lofty, that is what we have to, that's what we have to put at the forefront. That's what I think the court gave us, the court has given us an opportunity. They have said it is a reality, you know. Gone as far as even using the word revolt. They have told us this is the possibility. And so if our issue is getting a large quantitative mass, then we have to think outside the box, Lofty. We have to think outside the box. This police force is trigger happy and crazy. Yeah, we have to act. We have to act. Because if we do not act, we will spend another 10, 15 years just commenting on Matt on Q and commenting here and commenting there.
And wasting time.
I don't think, wasting time.
Well, if I may say though, Lofty, if I may, I mean, I heard Bernard suggested something to the effect of a National Salvation Committee like we had in '79. And yes, that I think is how should I say, is doable. But even as Zed is saying, and I tend to disagree with Zed about going back to the courts, because we've seen how that play out. If we decide, I mean, first of all, time is not on our side. We've seen the two last elections only now be to getting the final results in the court. So I think clearly, as he rightly put it, the CCJ has put the ball in our court and say, guys, this is what you need to do. And Wilshire made reference to Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, and so. I think that may be part of our problem too in Dominica, that all of that has to come together. There has to be some, what I could call, do I use the word leadership? I don't know if that's the right word, but it has to come to a head. And if Wilshire, I'm sure will agree with me in the '79, I'm sure he's familiar with one of the personalities who are at the forefront, who were in the front saying, hey, we will not, and people follow. So I think the challenge for us now is who and how many of us have the courage to lead in the front, to take the bull by the horn and say, hey guys, and like we just said, there are going to be consequences, there'll be arrests, there'll be people may get, it's not violent, but people in the process may get hurt. Martin Luther King went to jail how many times? Got battered in his head. His house was burned down. His children got things. I mean, you name it. John Lewis, this is John Lewis. His brain was almost battered out of his head. And he kept fighting and fighting. So I think that is the challenge for us. I always believe there is hope. And we, those of us who are long enough to have lived, have seen reference only to Sri Lanka. We saw it just a few months ago. there was a situation in that we saw our own experience in Dominica. Some of us who lived it saw Grenada. We may have our own points of view as to how it go, but we saw during the reign of Eric Gary what happened in Grenada with his Mongoose gang. So history has taught us where this thing can go. And I think what it requires now is that determination and more persons to speak out and some persons or persons to take the lead and say, hey, the CCJ have said we should not, and therefore let us take that and proceed.
John, if I if you might, you don't mind, even Paul, I would like to just, I mean, you see, one of the things that plagues us down there, a lot of it, is some resources. It's not money, but resources. And by and large is, there's a small contingent of us out here in the diaspora who consistently, make sacrifice to make those. And a lot of diasporans are asking for change, all the time on Facebook, on all. I think people need to realize that from the diaspora, one of the major ways in which you can help make those changes happen is to be on the ball in terms of supporting what's going on, materially. It's to be on the ball in terms of supporting what is going on materially. This thing can be done. It can be done. It can be done. But here's what you have. You have people who are already financially stressed, going up against an institution that is monetarily laggest. That is just, it's laden with money. It's loaded with money, And so I think while we talk about the people in Dominica, they keep talking, we must take a certain sense of responsibility, civic responsibility externally, to be consistent about helping the struggle happen. It needs, look at the advocacy. The same way we're talking about putting that crew together to fight, we have to have an advocacy. We have to have a teaching of the people. There needs to be a teaching of the people. The conversation of electoral reform, in as much as you may say you've had this symposium there, that symposium there has not been a consistent effort to educate the Dominican people on the general prospectus. We get involved in that Anthony Astafan thing, that Roosevelt thing, too much of it. And we do not get into the specifics of the situation, especially our presented solution. We don't think them out. We don't, people mention them in political parties and all, but we do not have a concerted and described and descriptive conversation with the people on these civic issues. And that needs to change. That needs to change because electoral reform can be easily had in Dominica. It can be easily had. The only thing that is keeping electoral reform from being easily had is Roosevelt Skerritt and Anthony Astafan, because they understand as long as the people get a conscientious understanding of electoral reform, the politics in Dominica will change.
And it isn't just electoral reform. It isn't just electoral reform, Zed.
Agreed.
I mean,
agreed.
look at Astafan. The people of, to point out to the people of Dominica that this man has an army of Black people paying starvation wages, and he's preventing them from forming a union. Look at the response.
Yeah.
The people of Dominica should be able, bon Dieu, to open their eyes. So look at please sort a letter then. They cannot see that this man doesn't even want them to have a union. A union to protect their rights. So Dominicans, open your eyes and see that this man is not for you. This man is supporting Skerritt because Skerritt is helping him to maintain his power and his wealth in Dominica and to make wealth on you. That is what he is doing. You understand? And he thinks we nous toutes les sortes. Il qui est no avec. You think you're all a bunch of fools. But those armies of these guys who go up there for 50, how much is paying them? $50 a day? And think of the amount of money this Astafan was making. Some time ago, he said on the radio, I heard him, somebody asked him his income, he said he makes $8 million a year.
Yeah.
$8 million a year. And he has people paying starvation wages, working for him to make millions and millions for him and a small family of his, while the majority of those people can hardly put $50 a day. Dominicans, open your eyes, mon Dieu. This man is not for you. He's against you. And he's supporting Skerrit. You think he's supporting, why you think he's supporting Skerrit? He's supporting this so-called Labour. This Labour Party is just a name. It's just a name to fool you, to make you think that this name is for you, is Labour. But it's not Labour at all. It's nothing to do with Labour. It's only a ruse, a trick to fool you, to make you think that this is a party for you. Even this housing program, up till now, he hasn't even given people titles to these houses. People don't even know if it's theirs. I mean, come on. But we cannot be that, we cannot be so kunumunu. And nobody will take your houses from you. These houses are there now. Nobody can take them away from you. So you don't have to support Skerrit. These houses. This is not Skerrit's money. This is your money. It is the people's money. Nothing to do with Skerrit.
And you know
nothing to do with Astafan.
You know what's hurtful, Brother Wilshire, is to see people like the Ghost and a lot of these other goblins, intelligent people, enabling Anthony Astafan to carry out that kind of mission, When I see a man like Kelly, the Ghost, bro, former teacher, conscientious brother, on Carry FM, enabling Anthony Astafan to persist in a contribution of conversation that is derogatory to Black people in the country. Kelly
is not conscientious. Kelly is living in a time warp.
Man,
he's not conscientious. How can he be conscientious and supporting this kind of nonsense that's going on? I mean, this man is blind. He's very short-sighted. They cannot see beyond the tip of their noses. But let us give support. We need an organization to give strong support to the workers, the people who work at Astafans, who work in these establishments. Their wages need to be raised.
Exactly.
The cost of living has risen so much. And yet these people's wages have not been raised at all. While Astafan is making huge profits, which nobody knows how much profit he makes. He's not accountable to anybody. He's not supporting Skerrit because he supports you. He's supporting Skerrit because he knows that by supporting Skerrit, the system that he is maintaining that makes him rich will be continued. That is what he's supporting, his own interest, not yours. So open your eyes. Nobody can take the housing that already been built, that is yours. And any new government will now transfer title to you. And it will be yours. And not only that, will help you to repair, because very soon these buildings are going to need repair. And who's going to repair them? They're going to turn into slums and dens of drugs and despair. So there's enough for us to be able to go and talk to the people and show the people what is actually going on. But you need to have, we need to come together, a new organization with a new resolve. And the resolve has got to begin that there must be no further elections in Dominica, and let him, if he wants to go and call his election, let him call his election. We will take no part. We will give him no legitimacy. We will in fact maintain that this government is illegitimate, and we will get support. We'll get international support. We'll get support from the other islands in the Caribbean, because in no other place in the Caribbean do you have that kind of electoral system that you have in Dominica. And everybody in the Caribbean will understand what we're talking about and will support us. All we need is courage and determination.
Yeah. Bernard, thank you, Bernard. And Zed, Bernard, you made a point earlier that you touched on the idea. And we are talking about solutions here, or a solution in the first instance to kind of fix our problem in Dominica. You mentioned the idea of a committee for national salvation that Dominica went through before.
Mm-hmm.
That is a noble idea, yes. But I'll be very blunt if you, Mr. Wilshire, Alvin, Zed, and the others listening. The level of partisan, cross-partisan politics that is pervading this land, Bernard, it is, I am saying it is sort of rotten to the core. And that stands in the way of the idea that you suggested. Here it is. We have the political parties in Dominica, Freedom Party, UWP. We have this third party came on board. We have, well, what is remaining of APP. And the mass of people, and that is me seeing it on the ground as somebody that is always on the ground. The mass of people, they are caught up in that quagmire in either a group or the other, politically speaking. Now, that idea that you came about with, there's some level of sacrifice that must be made to say, okay, here it is, my country, our country is in problem. Let us put down these political groups, these political parties, these political organizations, and do it for country. But I must say, I must lament the fact that that has not happened. And I am not seeing it happening if the mindset of the people don't change. So how do we get there, Bernard? That's the question.
You don't,
with that mindset.
Lofty, you don't start off from point A and just jump to point Z all at once. Of course, there's going to be difficulties, but in the long run, objectively, there is a need for something like that. And if you are persistent, if you persevere, work away at it, little by little, onward ever, backward never. It will fall together. It will come together in the end, Lofty. It will become more popular in the end. It may start off now being weak. It may look very weak. I mean, don't forget, let us take the example of the early Christians. Look at how when they started. You understand? Nobody would even have dreamt that Christianity will one day become the force that it's become today, or that it became, a few decades later on. You've got to start off somewhere. You understand? And I think the way that you start, you need to bring people together in a new formation, not the old. You cannot put old wine in new bottles. The old kind of thing, UWP and Labour and this and that is the same old. And that's not going to get nowhere. We need to start something. We need to break the mold, and something has got to give. And I think we need to go out there, bring people together, and let people know that this is, in fact, a government in exile, as it were. This is an alternative government. And I think you will get support. Last election, Lofty, what you all didn't see is that the Americans are prepared to support you.
Yep.
But you didn't see it. It was voté avec.
Yep.
You all didn't see what was going on. What do you think the Americans that issued an advisory for? That is not going to advise you, give you political cover. You didn't see it.
Yep.
And you resign. You let go the bone. And therefore they could not do anything for you again. But they too are fed up of Mr. Skerritt and his shenanigans, and they know what is going on, and all the corruption. And don't forget what he's doing. There's a threat to them too. You understand? So I think you need to. It's going to be difficult, but I think that is where you need to begin. I think you need to bring people together. All the different organizations, yes, and stop all this egotism. All of them in their own ego, the APP and this and that and this and all of them want to build up their own little empire, and all of them no. Let us put something the patriotic mandate first. We bring everywhere together and we form this Committee of National Service and we bring people into it. We advocate, we talk to people, we explain to people, and gradually I believe you will get support until something, some new idea, new consciousness will begin to build up, especially among the youth, because there's nothing for them. What are they offering the young people in the country? Absolutely nothing at all. Piss all. Nothing at all. You think there's cutting some grass on the side of the road is going to do anything for a young person growing up in Dominica under this what do you call it, NEP? The NEP has a kernel of a good idea in it. It can work, but not under those present conditions. You understand? Yeah. And little by little, you will get support if you proceed in this way. But if you all of it in, you know, you have your own little some people forming the APP, some people forming the NJAM, some people forming this thing, and some people forming and nobody bring all of that together in something different, and it can happen. A committee for national salvation to save the country.
Lofty, let me just follow up on.
We are slowly but running out of time. It's like what, 5 to 6, so we can spin about 20 minutes on there, but we have to wrap up in a while.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
You see, Lofty, what the governing posture of Roosevelt Skerrit has done with Dominica is we have placed everything on a political premise. Everything. We press everything on a political premise. So we're going to organize something. We're thinking of the political parties have to come together and the thing. Lofty, it's a civic process. It's a new paradigm. We have to bring the conversation into the civic space. We too bogged down in political spaces, political definition. Something called Matt's first thing is, well, I got to call Lennox, I got to call this one, we have to change that paradigm. We have to bring the argument into the civic space. When we bring the argument into the civic space, we take up a whole lot of resistance, Lofty. A whole lot of resistance. When we come into the civic space, we get the chance for the small collective of people to come together as a consortium. So even if we cannot pull off the entire mass that we're thinking about, we can pull off a cohesive core. And we haven't had that. We have not had a cohesive core. And that is critical for mass building organization. You must have a cohesive core. CCM has come, there's no concerted effort. True, we need a few more foot soldiers on the ground. People like myself and others should be home to make it a little easier. That's a fact. But the point of the matter is, we need to forget about the political space for a while in forming this new attack on electoral reform. Lofty. It's very critical. And I want folks like you who are there and the others listening, we have to take the thing outside of the political space and engage a more civic-centered organization in dealing with Roosevelt Skerrit on this issue. It's do or die, Lofty. It's do or die.
Let me just say quickly though, Lofty, with your permission. I think we cannot here not recognize the efforts and the work being done by the various groups. Granted, it may not be in the coordinated way that we would like it, but clearly the CCM, the NJAMs, I believe there was this guy, Tony LeBlanc. There were several persons who championed the whole question of electoral reform. Now, yes, it may have taken place at, one might describe disjointed, but I think it's fair to say though that there are persons in Dominica right now, one might say they are the lone voices taking their blows, put it this way, quote unquote. I mean, we can underestimate the work that Lofty's been doing with Civic Vibes and his organization and Paula and the rest of them. So we just don't want it to come across and that those of us in the diaspora and to interpret it that way do not recognize that, because I personally certainly recognize that. I think what is important and what needs to be focused on is how do we collect, how do we bring all that effort together as against at this disjointed level? And I think what the CCJ report has done, and in particular as it relates to section 104 in the final thought, is how do we take that and galvanize that now, based on what Zed has been saying and to a certain extent, Brother Wilshire. How do we now say, okay, guys, this is where we are. We've done that work. We've been talking electoral reform over the years. We've had various groups echoing various groups. How do we bring this thing together and ensure that The Dominicans are with us. Because again, I will maintain, guys, electoral reform is just a symptom of the bigger problem, you know.
Exactly.
Electoral reform is just a symptom of the bigger problem. That's just one thing, you know. What is at attack, and I think Brother Wilshire made reference to that, is our democracy.
Yep.
Everything is undermined. The church is undermined. The civic group. The Prime Minister went to a year or two ago, maybe he went to some function and said he wants to get rid of NGOs. How they're attacking his government or doing whatever. That is attacking civil society. You want to get rid of them and you will come after them or something to that effect. The Prime Minister have gone on record saying no law, no constitution will prevent him from doing what he wants to do. So that electoral reform is just a small part, but the bigger picture is our democracy that's at stake. And I think we may need to look at our messaging. That's important. At the end of the day, messaging is important. It's like any company going out and branding or trying to sell a product or service. If you can capture the minds, no matter how much I say, I'm not going to buy that product. But when I see this thing on the TV, I say, what? Let me try it. So our messaging has to be important. And how we bring those groups together, I think. But I just want to, on the record, say to all of you guys in Dominica, all of these various organizations, we have put your necks on the block and saying and doing what you need to do to continue doing it. But let's bring it together so that we can see and get a more concerted action in our efforts.
All right, Brother Thomas, thank you very much. Let us go around the table now. It's 7:05. I see the need by some of the viewers and listeners for more time, but we want to stick to the 7 o'clock, the 2-hour span this afternoon. All right, we will continue similar conversations in the future, but you know, sometimes we have to quote unquote call it a wrap. So let us go around the table now, starting with Brother Zed, as to the CCJ report and the importance thereof and what we can do, Zed.
Lofty, I think the CCJ allows us to go beyond just being good citizens on this issue of electoral reform. It allows us the breathing space to become to have much more advocacy, much more physical involvement, much more persuasive confrontation, a much more agitated foot forward in dealing with the government on this issue of electoral reform. We do not have to be violent in the sense of this violence, but we have to move to a posture of disruptiveness and civil disobedience. I think the court allows us that, and it's there in the language. And we just need a consortium, a small, and like I say, we keep talking about the big thing. If we cannot pull that big thing, the small thing can make it happen with a totally different strategy. And I just want us to put that into our minds, and these concerted patriots who put that into your minds. We can disrupt this thing without the large mass and win.
Zed, thank you. Brother. Thank you, man. Peace and blessing. Thanks for all your comments and contribution here. Brother Thomas.
Thank you, Lofty. Well, let me just end by saying that the CCJ report is a blueprint. The blueprint for us to move forward on what needs to be done, what can be done as it relates to electoral reform and the safeguard of our democracy. That's the way I see it. I mean, it can't be much clearer than how it is echoed in the final thoughts. And I'm sure when the justices were writing that, they deliberated extensively and look at all the facts that were before them, all the information that came before them to arrive at that conclusion. And the conclusion that they said is that there are areas of grave concern, not just areas of concern, grave concern on how the process of these elections were conducted. So that's a blueprint, and that any future elections in Dominica ought not to proceed. These are their words. So like that, I agree. They've given us the what one might say the go ahead, and it's on. I guess it's on that premise that you had the person of the Attorney General issuing the kind of statement that he issued, asking the CCJ to clarify and don't say stuff like that again and don't get political or whatever. So clearly, our work is cut out for us. Our work is cut out. Like I've always said on these programs, I'm a man of faith and hope. But they say too that faith without action means nothing. So we have to bring some action to the strategy. And I believe that yes, if we approach it in the manner that need to be approached, there can be some positive results. We should not have another election without reform. Jump by jump, period. Whatever we got to do, we just got to do it. Whatever coordination we need to coordinate it. And let me just end on that final note to say though, and I know folks sometimes say, oh, you guys in the diaspora, you in your goodness or whatever, you're not in DA and you just run in your mouth, blah, 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 blah. I normally dismiss that, to be honest with you. At the end of the day, as I keep telling them, I'm a Dominican, mostly Dominican. And nobody go run me from Dominica, okay? And my records are clear in Dominica. But let me say though that we got to fight that front, not just in Dominica, but on the regional and international stage as well. And I think Brother Wiltshire made a very fundamental point there as it relates to the US and the last election. Sometimes you have to be able to see who is there and prepare to help you. We cannot fight this fight alone. As we speak now, every single island, every single member of CARICOM and the CARICOM have undertaken reform. Everyone. Not one that have said no. Everyone, Jamaica all the way down to Guyana, have taken some level of reform. So we need to put the pressure out there to in the region. Why is it that Barbados do reform, Jamaica, Trinidad, you name it, and you don't want to do reform? We have to take it to the international stage as well. So, but as I said, I'm a man of hope. And again, thank you, Lofty, for the opportunity to contribute and to the many listeners and folks viewing. And as always, I'm always pleased. Good to see my good friend Zed. Good to see you, bro. And,
yeah,
and
man,
Bernard.
one love.
Good to see you, Bernard. And Paula. So thank you guys and have a good week.
All right, Brother Thomas, thank you very much for your words here as well. Mr. Wiltshire, we move across to you. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't have very much to say. I've said it all already, Lofty. So, you know, it's up to us to act. We've talked enough. Now is the time for action. Let us see what action we're going to take. Rational action. Sit down, think it through, and be not afraid. Do not be afraid. Our country has gone through worse times. Our people were in slavery for 400 years, and we survived. We will survive Skerrit and his henchmen. Be not afraid, but let us act. And let us not just talk. Let us act. Let's go out to the people. And let us take a concrete action. Let us do something. Let's set up something and develop a program in which we are going to engage our people, especially the youth.
Especially the youth.
Yeah, these are you've got to go to them, especially the youth. You've got to find new ways, creative ways of engaging the youth, of talking to them, of reaching them wherever they are.
Economic conversation.
You understand? I mean, people like me, you know, in a way, my time already passed. But you have the young people. These are the people you have to go to now. And you cannot tell me that you all cannot find ways of talking to the youth and having a constructive conversation with them, difficult as it may be. It doesn't matter if you start with one or two, it will grow. As Mao said, 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Single step.
Urgency of now.
The fierce urgency of now.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very, very much on behalf of the many, many folks listening and viewing. I can tell you based on the comments back and forth, you know, the chitty chatter on the live feed, I know the persons, they did enjoy the program. And so, you know, I don't have enough words to thank you guys for your invaluable contribution to the program in terms of what will sink in into the minds and hearts of Dominicans. Thank you guys. See you guys sometime.
Yeah, man. God
All
bless.
right, Lofty.
Okay,
Take care,
bye-bye.
man. All right.
All right,
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.
Bless.
Once again.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
Paula, God bless.
Paula, well, that leaves me and you here. Paula, your final wrap up comments.
Well, Lofty, this program this afternoon is one that, well, as usual, we have always been having very good programs. But this one, this afternoon, where Mr. Wilshire in particular did this echoing that we should not find ourselves going to a next election in Dominica without electoral reform. I have always been echoing that as well, because Lofty, if Dominicans were to find themselves, or we as Dominicans were to find ourselves going to a next general election in Dominica, with what we've seen in 2019, there were bad elections before that, but 2019 was one that was very, very clear. And like the CCJ have spoken, persons who have listened to what transpired, there are persons who were in doubt. I know some persons, especially the labor rights, some of them are still in doubt and they are saying, okay, nothing went wrong in 2019. But for those who listen to what transpired from the highest court, often this is a clear indication to all right-thinking Dominicans. We should never, ever allow ourselves a next election in Dominica. And Mr. Wilshire said it right. Other countries will assist us. They were willing to assist us last election. Persons maybe who didn't know, and he said it this afternoon. Let's forget about 2019 because maybe some persons didn't know. But to find ourselves going in a next election again, it is not going to be different if we end up doing the same thing like we did in 2019. Lofty, Dominica might be the smallest, the country with the smallest population in all the other Caribbean countries, the smallest population. And we are the only country who does not have voters' ID card. And we have not been cleaning the list for a number of elections. And we are saying that the people who are living out there, we are not saying if you are living out there and you have the right for you to vote because you've lived here maybe before the 5 years and whatever. We are not saying, okay, you should not vote. Although my stand on that is, if you live out there and we in Dominica here, we should be allowed to enjoy who we voted for here. But the persons who are out there and they know better, they should do better. And I support this call this afternoon by Mr. Wilshire and the other gentlemen, 100%. We should never go to our next election in Dominica without electoral reform. So Lofty, once again, thank you so very much. Thank you to all the gentlemen. It was indeed a wonderful program. Although we know the devil is alive, but sometimes we have to say, okay, we put him under our feet because I realized there's some negative comments that were coming in. And then sometimes it's just a distraction. It's a way like, you know, to divert the conversation. But thank God that we kept on track. And we know a number of persons out there been viewing us. They've been giving their comments and everything. So once again, Lofty, thank you very much. Everybody have a blessed night. Have a nice week. Thank you.
All right,
Paula.
Paula. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Let me thank the gentlemen who were here with us this afternoon as our special invited guest. That is Brother Alvin Thomas, also Brother Zed Lloyd, and as well Brother Bernard Wilshire. These gentlemen, I can tell you, they did justice to the conversation that we just had. So I want to thank them on your behalf. What would the conversation be? What would be the discussion without you folks on the live feed engaging each and every Sunday? We want to say a special thank you to each and every one of you out there. Those of you make time, take the time, make the sacrifice in terms of that time, that 2-hour block from 5 to 7 now is the new time, each and every Sunday to make it happen with us. And so we always appreciate your eyes and ears. So we want to thank you very, very much. What the Civic Vibes team has taken on itself is that this report from the CCG, we have decided as a team that no matter what program we will be touching on in the future, that report, these words are so important to us as a people. As Alvin said to us in Dominica with democracy, we will be touching on that report in some way, shape, or form, whatever the conversation we're having in the future. So folks, we are not letting down the ball. It is too important of a conversation, of a topic for us to just have 2 conversations, 3 conversations, and drop it and move on. We have to bring it to the people, and Civic Vibes is playing its part in one way, shape, or form to bring it where it matters. Bring it to the nooks, bring it to the cranny, bring it in the bars, bring it under the mango tree, wherever the people need to hear the message, because on the live feed like that, a lot of persons still not hearing, they're still not taking it in. So Civic Vibes, you can trust that team to bring it to the people in terms of the message that is needed out there. And so, yes, bringing that message, there is a cost to bringing that message. And so that is where now we want to implore on all of you out there, once it is within your economical power, to help us in the struggle, to help you, help ourselves. And that is where we make a special appeal now. You can go to our website, that is at civicvibesda@gmail.com. Again, civicvibesda@gmail.com. That is our email address, sorry. Go to the website on civicvibes.com. Yes, civicvibes.com. And there you can contribute financially, contribute whatever you can so that the work on the ground can continue. We also covet your prayers in that regard. We also covet your finance as well. All right, because as one of the guests said, the good book says, faith without works is dead. And so we can have all the faith in having it happen, but unless we go out there and do the hard work, do the kind of arduous effort that is needed, like we come here every Sunday and do it, then it will not get done, and we'll just be going over and over that recurring decimal ever so often, and we'll be in the very same position. What I want to say as well before we bring the program to a wrap is that yes, we will be out there. The Civic Vibes team will be out there in your community, so you can look out for us. Once we have taken that decision, we will make you know when we will be in the community, and so you can look out for us. All right. So people, that is it for us. So again, we want to thank all of you for staying the course with us this afternoon. Thank you very, very much. I'm gonna try operating with this, try to pull up a song here. My computer basically just giving me some issues as we end in, but at least it is the end. Paul, I just want to make a comment based on what you said about the detractors. I normally use negative energy and turn it into positive. So why the detractors are there, then we know that we are doing something good. And it's in that vein that we have to take the comments from the detractors when they come. Because at the end of the day, you must realize to produce light, the light that I am under now, the light that you're under, Paula, it is negative and positive energy to bring forth that, luminous. Well, so, we have to be grounded.
And I think the fact that they're there for 2 hours.
Thank you very much. That is how we have to do it, Paul. We cannot take the negative energy and be so bogged down with it. We have to take it and turn it into positive. Once we take it and turn it into positive, then we will be getting the better good out of it. Let me see if I can pull up that song from a young brother. His name is Mortimer. All right, Mortimer, Mortimer, and that song will bring us to a very fitting close in that his song is entitled Fight the Fight. Dominicans, see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye. We love you.
All right. Take care, man. All the best. Bye.
Okay, bye, folks.
Yeah, man. Good night, Paula.
Thank you very much once again.
All right, Paul. All right, Zed.
Yeah,
Okay,
man.
bye.
Bless.
Nice. Okay,
Comrade
yeah.
Wilshire, good evening. Good morning in London.
Yeah, Mr. Wilshire, good morning. Okay.
All right, Dominicans, I realize, sorry, that song wasn't going out. Let me take that number from the very top, from Motima. He entitled this one, Fight the Fight. Yes, from Motima.